Welcome,
and
everybody, to tonight's Beauty Business Reset, episode number 37. We have the pleasure of having Jay on tonight. Jay and Andrew are going to take you on a little bit of a journey through salon ownership, and it should be pretty exciting. James and I will just sit back and be the hecklers like the two guys from the Muppets. So, so it's all yours, guys.
okay. Well, everyone, we see Jay Williams here. Jay was on, what was it, a couple weeks ago, Jay?
And what, I've lost track of time.
Yeah,
I only know yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Gave a fantastic, riveting, really, you were great. Presentation on 9 leadership traits, and you can see that in our, you can go over to the YouTube channel in case you missed it, and it's a not to be missed. So go over to the YouTube channel afterwards, not now. And Jay and I had exchanged some emails, and we're talking, and Jay said, people today, I mean, we presented a lot. You guys have a ton of information, and perhaps now, the group would want a conversation more than just a straight presentation. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And I'm going to ask Jay a bunch of questions. And I am sure, and I know they're really interesting questions that each one of you out there can relate to. And a lot of the work that Jay does centers around this. And actually some of the work that I do centers around this too. And we'll get right into it. And Jay sent me this email, and he said, let's talk about social comparison theory. And I scratched my head and I said, what is social comparison theory? So maybe, Jay, you want to explain to us what you mean by that?
Oh, no, those are the questions I wanted you to answer.
I know.
You mixed up the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
So here's what's important about it is that this is, I believe, where we need to start and what's going to go on for us. And I want to preface the call, and I'm prefacing every call. So if you've heard it before, it's still true today, is that I want to acknowledge what's going on. And what's going on today is that we're struggling financially, and understandably so. And we're struggling with our health as it relates to decisions, our financial decisions, our health decisions. And then we're struggling with our freedom as well. And so I just want to acknowledge as we go through and, we go back and forth with the chatting, and we're encouraging you guys to jump into the conversation as well, is that whatever I say is not to minimize or mitigate that fact. It's in addition to, and then how do we navigate through this? And so as we talk today, the social comparison theory is this. So for those of you who've gone through Psychology 101, or maybe have read a book, or have a friend who went through therapy, and by friend, I mean you, of course, you might be familiar with this term. Social comparison theory basically operates off of this premise, is that when someone does not know how to react in a situation, they look for the highest ranking individual in that situation. And so for those of you, I'm sure a majority of you have been on a plane before, and you've been on a plane where you experienced a little bit of turbulence. And you probably recognize this. The flight attendant gets on the line and says, "Hi, we're experiencing a little bit of turbulence. If you'll put your tray in an upright position, we'll be suspending the movie and the drink service momentarily. Thank you." And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay. Now let's just pause for a second there and just go through the scenario. You're 30,000 feet in the air. You're in an apparatus that could be the better part of 10 tons. Yet that person in that environment, the highest ranking individual, has said something and mirrored a behavior to you that they want you to model, that it's okay. And what do? We fly every day. And of course, I'm taking the last 5 weeks out of this context. And we have flown that way. And I will tell you, is about 18 months ago, I was on a flight, and this was the announcement. Hi, this is your captain. We're going to be practicing the crash position. We're going to ask that you put your head between your legs, and you guys know where that goes. So where I was sitting, the flight attendant was sitting in the jump seat, caddy corner. And I looked over, I said, we're going to be okay? She goes, we're fine. I've been through this. We'll be fine. And once again, social comparison theory. Now, for those of you who are old enough to remember, do you remember the movie Airplane? And do you remember when there's a turbulence and the flight attendant is smacking people and punching people? Social comparison theory. People didn't know how to react. If they're nervous, I should be nervous. And so I share that with you because as a leader, and when I say leader today, I'm not talking about by title. I'm saying if people follow you, if you go in a direction, you look behind you and there's people behind you, you are a leader. So it could be as a stylist, it could be front desk, it could be as an owner. This is where you need to begin. You need to lead by example. The people will look at you, and how you respond more often than not will determine how they show up. And so the anxiety and the apprehension, and listen, the anger now, and I tell you, you know what? It's warranted. We got to acknowledge some of this that's going on. That aside, we cannot lose sight of the mission. And the mission in our industry is to make people feel better. And if that's not your mission, this is probably the wrong call for you. Not that it makes you less than, it's just the people in our industry that uniformly has become their mission is to make people feel better. And so they are looking to you to determine how they feel and how they should feel. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty. And they're going to walk into your salon and they're going to see you in a mask and they're going to see you in gloves and you're going to ask them to sign a disclaimer. You're going to give them a pen that's in a packet that they have to break open and sign. And they hand back to you, you go, no, you can keep it. Trust me, it's okay. And so this social comparison, it's imperative that you understand that this is part of the skill set that you will need to heavily weight the outcome in your favor. I cannot help you with what's going to happen. I have no control and no insight into that. Today is not about what happens, but about how you respond to it.
So what are the different types of responses that people are having today? Is there any one type of response that is more prevalent than before this period of time?
Yeah, so I love the way you phrased the question, before this period of time. So, in my career, I've always been able to say to someone, to contextually put things into place, is this a life or death situation? And the truth of the matter is 99.9% of the time it was not. However, that is no longer the case because there are decisions that are being made where the end result could be that. And so I don't take this lightly. What accompanies that is one fear more than any other emotion, which is fear. Okay. And so if you guys are listening in, and to answer your question directly, the number one emotion is fear. Interestingly enough, the second emotion is anger. So you might go, I understand they both start with A's, but I don't see the connection. Is things that you fear, someone you fear, anger is not the too distant emotion to that. It's coming along. And so when we talk about this fear, here's what I would share with you is I want to acknowledge it. It's imperative, by the way, when people share emotions with you, is that we have a tendency to say, oh, well, it'll be okay, or it's not that bad. That is not your role. You don't have to validate it. It's just acknowledging it. And so whether it's with yourself and acknowledging, hey, I have this emotion of fear, or your employees have a fear, is to acknowledge it. You don't have to validate it. I just want to differentiate between the two. What will help you to get your arms around this fear is that if you can differentiate between if it's a fear or it's a fact. So a fear will
Mhm.
be a feeling. A fact will be data. And so if you have a fear that the salon is not safe, then what you want to do is to say, hey, is there data to support that fear? Now, here's the cool thing about our brain. Whatever we believe to be true, subconsciously, you'll find data to
It gets
support
there.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's great that way. Here's the reality, though. That doesn't always serve you well. So when you look at the salon, you look at the precautions that are being taken. There was, I don't know if you guys saw Harry Wood. He'd gone live earlier this week. He's at Van Michael in Atlanta. He said he had doctors and nurses coming in and saying, you know what? You guys are safer than we are in the hospitals. And so that's what I want to share with you. If you have a fear, your people have a fear, don't argue it, don't defend it, don't explain it, acknowledge it. You don't need to validate it. You
So
just,
let me ask you something.
yeah.
What is fear when you say, what is fear itself? What's it about?
Well, let me give you a little bit of history with
Sure.
the fear. So you have the two parts of the brain. You have the emotional brain and you have the rational brain. So if you guys are tracking with me, I'm going to put the rational brain on hold. Here's what I will tell you that you'll love about the emotional brain, a rational brain, is that it has evolved over time. It knows what to wear, what to say, what to do. It can balance things out. The emotional brain has not evolved over time. And the first emotion, the primary emotion, was fear. That's why it's so readily available to us in the default. Fear, by the way, has served us well. The reason you and I are here today is because of that emotion. So when Earliest Man saw the saber-toothed tiger eat his friend and he went back to the tribe, he goes, hey, you should be really afraid of that big cat with the teeth. It served him well. Now they began to stay away and they were able to grow up and they were able to get married and to have kids. And you guys know how the story finishes. So I share that with you because fear can serve you in a great way. If you are in New York City and it's rush hour, I shouldn't cross the street because I'm afraid I'll get hit by a cab. Serves you well. Where fear can work against you is when there's not data to support that. And so now you're operating off a feeling versus facts. And so what you might hear is, well, I have a gut feeling or my senses tell me. And I would share this with you is that as we listen to the news today, that's what we're trying to vacillate between what are our emotions and what are the facts. And for the love of God, if anybody can help me get clarity on the facts, that would be great. And so for you in your role as a leader, and whether you're leading your stylist or you're leading the clients, is when they have a fear, is to ask them, tell me about that. Tell me about your fear. And I'd ask them, well, what part don't you fear? So imagine your staff, they say, well, I just don't know if our environment is safe. I'd ask them, well, what part do you know is safe? And they go, well, we're going to wipe everything down. And you know what? We're going to be in between each client. There's going to be 15 minutes. And, there'll only be a certain amount of clients in the salon at a time. And if we run over, people will be waiting in their car. We can text them. They're going to sign a waiver. I'd say, okay, what else needs to happen so that you no longer fear the situation? It's going to amaze you that human beings have the capacity to re-engage the rational brain. And the rational brain, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be afraid. The challenge with the emotional brain, by the way, is it doesn't differentiate in how it responds to real and perceived danger.
So if the brain doesn't, what do we have to do? Because we have to do that. We have to differentiate.
It boils down to this one skill set. It's the ability to ask a question.
Okay.
To ask yourself or ask someone else. Here's what's great about the brain. I don't have advice for you guys. I don't have monologues for you guys. I don't have scripting. I just want to share with you how the brain works. And then you guys, based on this, will be able to make your own decisions. If I said to you, Andrew, you know what, how long have you been doing this? And I said, you know, Derek, you mentioned you had military background. How long did you spend in the military? And I said, James, you know, you have a salon. How many stylists do you have? As I'm asking you guys these questions, you're answering them instantly. The way that your brain works is that when you ask it a question, it answers it. Now, the exception is if the brain is trained otherwise. So if you looked at the FBI, if you looked at the Navy SEALs, the CIA, where the brain is trained to do something different, that won't be the case. But for majority of the population, you can redirect their thinking by asking them a question. So that's why I asked the question earlier, because I understand how the brain works. And I just, to take it where I want to go, I ask a question. So when they said they had a fear, the first thing I asked them is, where do you have a comfort level? So I guided the brain to begin to deliver that information. What happens is that as they get that information and it provides this calm, the body's releasing a chemical called serotonin that relaxes the body. This is the skill of the future. Your ability to understand people, to understand and identify an emotion in yourself and others, and adjust your behavior accordingly. This is the skill of the future. So it's known as emotional intelligence, if anybody's done any reading or research on this.
So let me ask you, how can someone help a client if they don't know how to help themselves first when it comes to fear?
Ooh, James, you want to take that one? No. So the question is,
I could feel the free, Jay. Don't worry. No.
Okay, you could fill in this. Yeah.
I'm only kidding. Go ahead.
So the question is how can you help someone else if you can't help yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I would tell
When it comes to, specifically when it comes to fear.
Yeah. Here's what I would share with you. And this is what the good news is that science and studies have proven if you're aware of an emotion, if you're aware of it, so whatever it is, it could be depression, anxiety, apprehension, anger, whatever it is, you are 80% more likely to do something about it. So if you're on the call and you feel as though you can't help yourself, what I would do is to give yourself permission, because a lot of times we're fighting this. And so you can fight against the wave, or you can embrace it. And listen, we all fall victim to this. About 2 weeks ago on Monday, somebody emailed me and said, hey, we would love to book you. Now, realize 5 weeks ago, everybody canceled everything, not only the next event, but everything for the rest of the year. Very kind and thoughtful of them. Someone called. I was excited. I mean, they emailed. And so I said, yeah, would you like to Zoom, or would you like to FaceTime, or how would you like to do it? They said, we want you to be there in person. Emotional brain hijacked the rational brain. So I went, well, yeah, let's put it on the calendar and we'll schedule time to talk. And then I went to my wife. I go, oh my God, do they think I'm going to get on a plane? Am I going to go to an airport? I'm going to get on a plane. Then I'm going to rent a car that other people drive and then go to a hotel. And who knows if the hotels, right, have the sanitation in place. And then I'm going to get to the salon, right? And are they going to stay 6 feet away? And then when I get, are they wearing masks? Am I wearing masks? How am I supposed to talk with the mask? Are they going to want to take a picture? Are they going to want to post it to Instagram? By the way, I did all that in 8 seconds. That's what your brain does. Your brain makes over 1 million connections a minute. And so I share it with you is that what's imperative is I had to realize the emotion was the fear. As soon as I did, as soon as I could link a word to my emotion, the serotonin began to be released in the body. And so to answer your question directly, if you can link a word to your emotion, with the release of the serotonin, it will engage your rational brain. And the emotional brain, your emotional brain only knows self-preservation. It only knows that. It has not evolved over time. It doesn't differentiate in the way it responds to real and perceived danger.
So how could you have done that in the conversation, or you couldn't have? Well, with the person who, to respond to them, because clearly you reacted to that.
Yeah, I appreciate you differentiating between the two. And so for Listen, you have a great deal of experience, Andrew, and I admire that. So I'm going to ask you to chime in. Here's the way I differentiate what you said. When you react, there is no time lapse, and it's
Okay.
what you say. So that's how I differentiate. When you respond, there's a pause, and you follow up with a question for clarity. So if you're listening, the reacting, no time lapse, and you jump in. So if I reacted and they said, we want you to be here in person, I go, well, I can't be here in person. The only thing I do right now are Zoom calls or I do Microsoft calls. That would be reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Responding would be pausing and then asking a question for clarity. So, which I did in that situation is I said, let's get it on the book and let's schedule time so that we can talk through what's most important to you. And so as you guys look at what you're doing, the thing to ask yourself is, am I reacting or am I responding? Reacting, there will be no time lapse and it's what you say. Responding, there will be a pause and you will follow up with a question for more clarity. So if a client comes in and they said to you, you know what, this red is the worst I've ever had. A response would be, well, you know, we pulled out the color wheel and you placed your finger on that shade of red. Responding would be pausing and just simply saying, it sounds like you had something different in mind. If I pull out the color wheel, will you just point out what you had in mind for me? Responding, reacting.
And how does response help relationship versus reaction?
Whew. I love the questions, by the way. Great questions, because I love to go deep. Here's how it helps, is that when you react, you put people on the defensive. Let me just net it out for you. And what
Bottom line it, Jay.
is the neuron, you have a mirror neuron in your brain. When you look in the mirror and how it does exactly what you do. If you defend and explain, I'll defend and explain. When you react, they will react, because the emotional brain hijacks the rational brain and it goes into self-preservation. I got to protect myself here. When you respond, it's a different dynamic there. And so what happens with this mirror neuron, and again, remember social comparison theory, I'm now modeling for them, is that I'm pausing. I'm asking a question to gain understanding.
Hey, Jay, let me ask you something. You talked about in your last call with us about emotional intelligence and those things, and obviously that was sort of a few weeks into this crazy, and now some salons are starting to open, and obviously in places like New Jersey, we'll see you in September, you know, or whatever it could be. But because Vanessa Rose was on a couple nights ago, and she talked about the mirror and how that reflection of that, you know, the clients, your empathy and their energy bouncing back to you. Do you have a safe word that if you taught your staff and you said, hey, I need to pivot and I need to bring you back into this, you know, how is that making you feel versus how are you making me feel? Is there, you know, I mean, maybe it's watermelon, I don't know. Is there a good word to teach the staff to have them pivot back to say, hey, I know you've had a crazy 3 months like we have, but we need to get back to what we're doing so I can get the next client in? Is there something that you can give for advice in that whole from the empathy side?
Are those two questions? Yeah, if I had a safe word, I only have one connotation for that. So allow me to pause.
Well, you are in the panic room doing the call, so the only reason I'm asking.
To pause? Okay. Yes, here's what I would share with you is that if you have a word, that could be you reacting. Here's what I would share with you. And James, just coach me along if I'm tracking with you. Imagine that person comes in, right? And you haven't seen me, James, and I'm coming in and you ask me, how's it going? You left it wide open. You didn't say to me, Jay, you know what, tell me the best thing that's happened in the last 5 weeks to you, okay? And we can talk about that another time, but you left it open. And I go, you know what, James, I don't know if my wife and I are gonna make it, honestly. I think we discovered a lot of things. And my kids, it's been a real struggle, and you know, I hate my job. In fact, I'm gonna be losing it, and I'm gonna lose my pension as well. And you know, they hate everything. They hate their dog, they hate their faith, right? And I think this is what you're talking about. They're taking you down this rabbit hole. The questions work the exact same way. Remember what I shared with you is that the way the brain works is that when you ask it a question, it immediately goes to answer it. So if you're doing that with me, you say, hey, listen, Jay, it sounds like there's been a lot on your plate. I'm not validating it. I'm just acknowledging it. And what it does is it paves the way for the question. The person goes, okay, you get me. So if you said to me, Jay, wow, it sounds like there's been a lot on your plate. In my brain, as human beings, we just want to know that people get us, right? You don't have to validate, because that may not be your perception, or you may work on the wife and, that's actually the opposite scenario, but that's not your job. You're only there to help, right? And so now you ask a question. You said, listen, Jay, sounds like a lot's on your plate. What's the one thing that's gotten you through? And you go, man, I've been reading these James Michener series, or you know what, I found this series online and I'm a musician and I just really have gotten into the guitar stuff. Or someone may say to you, hey, it's my faith. Somebody may go, hey, I found this new bourbon. What happens though is that when you ask the question, understanding how the brain works, it redirects the conversation.
Well, it's funny. The very first time I met Jay at a seminar, we talked about my least favorite statement, because I don't do hair. So my least favorite statement from stylists is, how's your color? You just opened up a floodgate of crap, right? It sucks. It's too dark. It's too warm. It's too cold. It's too ashy. It's too this. Instead of saying, what would you like to do different with your color? So for those of you that are on the call, whether it's Zoom or Facebook, is that Jay's giving you different ways to ask questions to sort of get to a better place of where you'd like them to be. Because when they're so open-ended, hey, Andrew, how's life? Oh, life is great, right, Andrew?
So talk about questions, not necessarily with clients, but eventually it ends up with a conversation with the client. But questions that owners are asking themselves, and we've been giving some answers, but that doesn't mean they're still not asking those questions. What do I do with prices? And how does this all, what's the conversation in someone's head when they're asking themselves that question?
Okay, so here's what I want to do. My gift to you guys won't be knowledge. That gift, if I have one, is to give you new and different thinking. And so when I share this with you, it's not to influence you. It's just to challenge your thinking. And so when you look at pricing, if you want to improve your performance, and whether your performance is retention or referral or rebooking or reviews, whatever you deem as performance, we have a tendency if this is performance, we go right to the behavior. We go right to that. So if you're not selling retail, you have a retail class, right? This sound familiar to you. You have a front desk issue, you have customer service training. But what drives performance is behavior. What drives behavior is emotions. And what drives emotions is thinking. So if you guys are listening to this, here's where I want you to start, is with the thinking. And this is something that you can replicate with any strategy. So as it relates to pricing, what's most important is to understand what the thinking is of that stylist or your salon. If their thinking is, I would never, ever pay what I charge for a haircut, you are off to a flying stop. Because if they won't pay $50 for a haircut, because their thinking is that's too expensive. And when they mention that price, their emotions are apprehension and anxiety. The behavior will be, there's no way I can recommend a highlight, and there's certainly no way I'm going to recommend product. Does that make sense to you guys? And so when you look at your pricing, I want to shift your thinking today. And if you guys are tracking with me, I want to ask you this. Do you think that you will be able to see less people, the same amount of people, or more people in a given day? And so just based on the calls I have, I think everyone would be in agreement, we're going to see less people in a day. And someone said that. Thank you, Laura, for validating that. Now, here's my next question. Do you think the demand to see you is going to be less, the same, or more? And let me help with your thinking. Someone put more. Thank you, Cindy Elliott. Let me go a little deeper, because I have gotten mixed responses. Is that there will be people who will be so desperate they can't get in with their salon that they call the next salon. That'd be one way. Another way is that there are stylists who just get out of the business. They can't make it. So the clients are still there, just The stylist is not there. I heard the other day, I got emotional when I heard this, so just bear with me, is that they believe that, well, in 2008, 2009, 20 to 30% of the salons went out. They believe that now it'll be 40 to 50%.
They meaning,
Yeah, this is what economists believe for our industry, is that 40 to 50% of the salons will not exist over the next 3 to 6 months. So when I share this with you guys, there's two audiences here. I want to show the compassion and the understanding and the sadness for that group. So that's one thought, if you'll be with me there. If I can turn to the other group that's going to be there, there's going to be tremendous opportunity. And I never want to celebrate someone else's failures as my success. Please understand the spirit of it. This is a separate conversation, not one I would have with them. But if we just stopped at this point, what you guys just said to me was that we're going to be able to see less people and there's going to be higher demand. There's a term that's referenced in our economy called supply and demand. And so if you're not familiar with it, here's the way it works. So anybody's went to buy beef or pork, you heard it on the news. I heard it, is that the supply is low, the demand is high. And what they said is the prices are going to go up. So somebody said it's basic economics. It is. I just want to share that with you. That's all. I don't know how that shifts your thinking. Now, so that's one thought if you're capturing that. Here's the next thought, is that I want to know, and this is conversation you can relay to your team to shift their thinking. I would ask them, what cost do you think is associated with us building trust within our clients that they can come back to our salon and not get the virus? And I picked my words carefully. What has evolved in building trust? Because trust is a new currency in which we operate off of. And so they're smart, by the way. They go, I don't know, we need gloves. They go, I don't know, we need masks. Probably need a cleaning service, need cleaning supplies, need a thermometer. They're smart people. Ask them the question. I said, okay. So I said, what do you think that costs? I don't know, $3,000, $4,000? They go, yeah. I go, you can ask $10,000. Yeah, you can ask your owner. This is a conversation, by the way. If you notice, I'm guiding it through asking questions. I asked them, I said, do you think that we should raise the prices for clients? And more often than not, over 90% have said, no, this is not the time to raise the prices. And I said, okay, so they're not going to pay for it. I said, are your owners adjusting your commission in any way? And I have not met a single owner, God bless them, that's adjusting commission. So I said, well, there's only three stakeholders in this equation. There's the client, there's you, and there's your owner. Who do you think's absorbing that $3,000 or $4,000 or $10,000 cost? By the way, if you notice, I'm using questions to guide their thinking. It's not what I say, it's what I ask, because there's a different dynamic when they come to the conclusion on their own. So I said, what do you think would be the fair thing to do if we know the cost is going up in an effort to build an environment that you can trust and that they can trust? And nobody's disputing that. Should we spend the money? Nobody's disputing that. What do you think the fair thing to do is? As long as you don't have to lower your commission, of course. I'm talking to the stylist. And they're like, oh, we should charge more. I said, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. And then their thinking is, and this is why it's so important to grasp what drives performance is behavior, what drives behavior is emotion, what drives emotion is thinking. Their thinking is, and this is what they say to me, I don't want to gouge people. Well, first of all, who's talking about gouging anyone? However, that is their thinking. And I said, oh, how do you define gouging? Someone told me a story. It's actually very interesting. I'm not going to mention the person because everybody knows them, but it's the point of the story. So about 4 weeks ago, there's somebody who's very famous who's on TV that they have, they're in ready to wear, so they have access to factories in Asia. And so they went to the governor in Florida and said, we can provide masks for you. I have a connection. They signed a contract. They were selling them at 3 times the price they were purchasing them. They caught him, by the way, and canceled the contract. It was Damon Johns, by the way, from Shark Tank. So that's gouging. I said, what if we just charged them what the cost was? It was interesting, it completely changed their thinking, and they thought, oh, that's fair. So what was interesting to me is that the thinking was around what was fair. It wasn't raising the prices, it was what was fair. They were thinking about gouging. And so I share this with you guys is because you have to shift their thinking. And what if someone came in and you said, you know what, our prices did only go up. We charged $50 for a haircut. It's now $57. They said, you had a price increase. And you said, yeah, I can't believe it. It was only $7. Everything that we were able to do to make you feel safe and trust the environment only cost $7. And our owner just passed on the cost. So I want to share that with you to shift your thinking. Now, I may step on someone's sandcastle, but hey, if I'm doing this on a Friday night at 8 o'clock,
You
all
can
right.
step on anyone's sandcastle.
All right.
You're allowed.
Somebody said, why don't we just put a COVID charge on there? I said, oh, tell me about that. They go, well, when I go to get my tires changed, there's a tire disposal fee. I said, do you equate the experience of going to get your tires changed with when you go to a salon where you're selling a feeling? My tire place is not selling a feeling. People come to the salon to escape. I don't want to be reminded. I don't care what you have to do to make this a wonderful experience. And so I just want to share these things with you guys to begin to shift your thinking so that your people are like, did our prices go up? Yeah, they only went up $7. They only went up $10. The color prices went up. That was interesting to me. I asked anyone, is there any scenario where you don't have to not pay for more? Listen, if you like drinking wine and you go to a restaurant and you ask for more wine, they charge you more. I needed extra mulch around the house.
So-
when I went back to the nursery, they weren't like, no.
Okay, so let me ask you, because it's a great, because we hear that all the time, and that's very logical.
Mhm.
It's and you know the emotional component is what is giving all the static. That's where we're getting the question from. How do we calm that static down? How does the owner, if the staff members all static, what does the owner do in the relationship to get that staticky person down?
Out of that. Yeah. So say it's Derek, right? And I
Right.
just say to Derek, he comes to me and, you know, I'm sensing that. I just say, hey, Derek, I sense something's going on for you. I can't quite put a word on it. Just tell me what it is for you. What I'm trying to do is as soon as he can attach a word to his emotions, I got him. Because I don't, here's what's important. I love that you're bringing up this nuance, is that when someone's in their emotional brain and you're in the rational brain, you can't communicate. There would be this constant disconnect. So your number one goal in communication is to move them away from their emotional brain into a rational state so that you're both having a rational conversation. So if I said that to Derek and Derek just said, you know, I'm just nervous and apprehensive, is that, you know, I just, with everything that's going on financially with everybody, I don't feel comfortable raising prices. So I'd go, oh, just so you could fill me in, what is going on with everybody? Because honestly, I'm at a loss. My buddy came over, social distancing, he and his wife on Sunday. He works for McKesson. McKesson fulfills FEMA supplies for masks and medical supplies. They gave every employee a $1,000 bonus and put $450 in their 401k and gave them 2 weeks vacation. My buddy, his wife's a teacher. She's still working. His daughter's a nurse. She's still working. His son works for Freddie Mac. He's still working. His other son works for LaGuardia. So who's going through? I know someone who hasn't basically worked in the last year and they got a $5,000 check on unemployment. I just want to understand, because that's not my experience. Their fear is not the reality. It's an emotion. There's not data to support that. And by the way, that's not their role. I mean, when I went to my accountant to do my taxes, he didn't go, hey, what's going on with your hair? So why is it?
He
So
didn't change
No.
accountants, man.
He's not full service, this guy. I'll just say, this guy only focuses on what his area of expertise is. Imagine that. But as a stylist, you know, we're just very quick to go, oh, can they afford that? Now, let me just share this with you. I understand it. What's happening is that in our industry, well over 90% of the people that participate in our industry are empaths. They actually take on the energy and the thinking of the people around them. What I would say is that one of the downsides to that is they don't validate their feelings. So I may feel as though that financially things are tough, and so I just don't want to charge you for that extra color, but I don't validate that things are tough for you. I know someone who has a situation where between the husband and wife, they're getting $1,000. Listen, this could be a majority of the population, by the way. They're getting $1,000 a week because their unemployment gets them $300 or $400, and they get $600. Just think about this for a second. I want to shift you guys thinking. So they get $1,000. They're married. So you do the math. They get $2,000 a week. That's $8,000 a month. That's $96,000 a year. And that's where you have to balance fear with facts. I have a fear that people won't have money. Well, what are the facts? The facts don't support that. And so this is, as a leader, this is the new skill set you will need, is to help people discover what they already know. Let me tell you, people know this unemployment inside and out. I go, well, what's your commission structure? Well, I'm kind of confused. It's a sliding scale. And what's your retail? I can't quite ever figure it out. I don't know what it is. What's your unemployment? Well, here's the minimum, and I can earn 30% of that. Or if I work one day, it takes 25% of the benefit off. I get $600 a week. Did I get that? Does this sound familiar to anyone? To June 29th, right? And it goes for 26 weeks, but I think there's a 13-week extension after that. And then there's a phase 4, and you go, oh my God, you can't figure out our commission structure. But you sure as hell know that. I'm just helping them discover what they already know. This is what leaders are proficient at. It's not what they say, it's what they ask.
So, you know, what I've noticed through the years and having conducted and participated in many staff meetings, they tend, and owners generally, and guys, tell me if I'm off base here, don't exactly relish having a staff meeting. It's kind of, you know we have to have them intellectually, emotionally, we know we're headed for the snake pit. I don't know if you guys would agree with me. What can we do? What can we do knowing what you've shared with us today? What can we do to have better staff meetings? Because we're going to need them. We need to communicate. And how can we, if we're coming from irrational, and many of the staff have the capacity, as you just said, to come from irrational, I understand my pay completely and I can do math, right? I don't know math. What do we have to do to run a better meeting so that we get the result that we need, which is to create a team, an environment where people are on board with what we have to do today? Is that too many questions, or you get where I'm going with that?
I smell what you're cooking. Yes, I do. All right, you guys, dig in here. You're gonna have to stop talking. That is the answer to your question. And you're gonna have to start asking questions. When you guys look at what's going on, with the sale, this is easy for me to share with you and to give you an example. So I asked stylists, I said, do you believe that you're going to make less, the same, or more money? Do you know that some stylists have not even never entertained that question? So I said, you did share with me that you're going to see less people in a day and that you don't want to raise your prices. So if you're seeing less people at the same amount of money you're charging, can we agree that you're going to make less? So people come around pretty quickly to this. So I said, well, what are your options to make more money. And so people say to me, well, I can come in early, I can stay late, I can work another day. I go, I'm tracking with you. What else can you do? They said, well, maybe I could just do higher ticket services. I said, what would that look like? They go, I don't know. Maybe I'll just do extensions and color. I said, what would you stop doing? They go, maybe I won't do shampoos unless it's a color. Maybe I'll ask them to do it ahead of time. Maybe I'll say for a blowout, I'll go, you know what? You can do this, or I can show you a video. Let me do something for you you can't do at home. Here's what I want to share with you. They have all the answers. There's a disconnect that's going on there. And you have to understand your thinking going in. Why are you talking? Are you talking because it makes you feel better? Are you talking because you don't think they know the information? Are you talking because you think it needs to be said? But what is your goal there? Your goal is to improve their thinking. You can't improve their thinking until you first understand where it needs help. Here's what I've learned. At this point, over the last 5 weeks, I've been on calls, Zoom calls, and James, you were generous enough to have me with your team like that between 2 and 4 days. So I would say over the last 5 weeks, I've seen over 1,000 people. They're smart people. When you ask someone a question, it honors their intelligence. When you tell them, it insults it. I've been in meetings and they're telling people things and I see, right? You guys recognize this? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I see something there that's one of our, someone just said, they don't trust they know the answers. They want someone to tell them, ask, and it's a question, I think. They want someone to tell them what to do, question mark. Is that a statement or they want someone to tell them what to do, exclamation mark?
Let me shift your thinking while you're navigating.
No, that's a statement. Okay.
Yeah, let me challenge that, if
Right.
that's okay. You're thinking, not Patty, because she knows me intimately and I know her and I never want to do that to her. Talking about battle that you would lose, is that our perception is that they want to be told what to do. My experience is that they may want acknowledgement, they may want validation. And so if they go, well, I don't know what I should do to make more money. What do you think? I'd say, well, I do have a response. Before I respond, tell me what you're thinking. And my experience has been, there's occasions where people don't know, at which time you would change from that coaching style to more of a consulting style. But I don't know until they tell me that. My experience is that's not always the case. Sometimes they want validation. They do know. They go, well, here's what I do. I go, that's exactly what I do. They go, I thought so. I just want somebody to support me with that. I need to help them be self-aware, self-accountable, self-directed, because what I'm training them to do is, you have a problem, come to me, I'll answer it. You have a problem, come to me, I'll answer it. You have a problem, come to me, I'll answer it. The good news is if you've trained them to do that, they're trainable. Now you just want to train them to do something else. They have a problem, they come to you and you go, before I respond, what are your thoughts? Here's how I'd handle it. Love it. Then when they come to you, they go, I know, here's what happened. Here's what I'm thinking I'll do. This is your gift as a leader. You know, it's interesting because I was listening in on something. They said the skills you need to lead in crisis. And I was listening, I was thinking, these are the exact same skills you need all the time.
Yeah.
If you're developing them during the crisis, not that it's too late, it's just going to be a struggle for you to learn and to ramp them up. These are the skills as leaders that we need today. What happens when you ask someone a question and they answer it, it builds significance, self-worth, sense of belonging. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is what people want. It builds their emotional commitment to what's going on. The risk you run is that you have people's mental, physical, financial commitment, but not their emotional commitment. You don't know you have it until you need it most. And trust me, that's not the time you want to find out. There are people finding out right now that they had their employees' mental, physical, financial commitment, but not their emotional commitment.
And how does that show up that they don't have, what's the tangible evidence of that? not having the
tangible
emotion.
evidence is people who are on, because I see this for sales organizations too. People are on unemployment, but still reach out to their clients. People are on unemployment, they're still active on social media. People are on unemployment and say, hey, listen, you don't have to pay me, but I'll drive and I'll drop that off to a client. That's when you have emotional commitment.
Mhm.
So some of you know Josh Hayfitz quite well. And, I don't know from a leadership standpoint if there's anyone that rivals him. And I have a little bit of bias, just I've seen him for 7 years. He has people I know because I've talked to them this week that have gone out and picked up the orders and dropped them off at the client's house. That's emotional commitment. There's discretionary performance. By law, if people are on unemployment, they don't have to report in. They don't have to do those things. I hear salespeople, they're having calls with their clients to discuss social media, to talk about the PPP program. For you, if your employees are engaging, if they're getting on Zoom calls, that's an example. The people who aren't, who are giving you excuses or pulling the law into play, those are people that you may not have their emotional commitment. It's hard to tell, right? Because you have their mental, physical, financial, they show up to work, they do their job, they're on time, they don't leave early. It's hard to tell. It's when push comes to shove and adversity shows up that you get a sense of where that emotional commitment is and that discretionary performance.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So people like predictability. I mean, this is what made McDonald's successful. Predictability. It's certainly not the food. And we all like predictability. I mean, that's just how it is. And we're kind of, part of this thing is, in my take, it's so up in the air that it grates us. How do I make, but we have control on certain things. One of the things we have control on is our own salon. Okay? Maybe we're told certain things, but we basically have control. What can I do to make the environment as predictable as possible? So let's talk a little bit about control, because maybe control means something different from me to you, to James, to Derek, and to everyone out there. Tell us about control.
Yeah, first of all, I love what you did, and this is imperative as a leader. So in my book, I talk about, in my new book, I use these almost juxtapositions, conflict versus conversation, but there's a definition for each, because what I've seen is that we're using the same words, we just define them differently. And you could be off to a flying stop when you do that. So what I love about what you said, Andrew, whether you reference Derek and James and even yourself, is how do you define control? And so it's important when I talk to someone, and I quite often hear that, and people have different mechanisms to that define control for them. So the first thing I would do, if somebody's struggling with that, I'd ask them, how do you define control? And what is it that is in control for you currently? Because what I'm trying to do is I need to quickly balance these feelings with the facts, the fear with the facts. And so what is it that you do have in control? And so it's imperative, if you're an owner today, is that to understand what you do have in control. One of the things you may have in control is your influence and your trust with not only your clients, but your employees. And like I said, trust is the new currency. That is the money in which we operate off of today. And the higher the trust level, the higher the speed in which things happen. And so I share that with you because once you understand what you can control, that is what you leverage. And so one of the things that's interesting, people are like, well, I don't know how my clients are going to respond. And I'm just not sure. Well, if you're not sure, go to the data. I don't know if they'll trust me. I don't know if they'll trust the environment. Go to the data. We have something in our industry that measures it. It's retention. If you have 62% retention, then 62% of your clients trust you. That's it. 38% don't have the same level of trust. And my experience for the successful salons is they do have a higher retention level. So as far as what I control, I believe that if 62% of my people trust me, I do have some retention and control through that retention. So first thing is define control. I've talked to stylists, and it's very interesting you bring that up, Andrew, because I've even seen young people as young as 22, 23, because I ask them, they go, things feel out of control. And it's interesting your choice of words, Andrew, because one comes right after the other. One doesn't come up without the other. They say, well, it's just not predictable. I'm not sure how much money I'm going to make, and I'm not sure if it's safe, and I'm not sure when we're going to open. Everything that you articulated. And so if you're in that scenario, what I would say is to, first of all, establish what you do have control over, to give things context. And then once they can establish that, it produces a calm in them. It gets them into the rational brain. And tell them, just so that I understand, what areas is it that you think, and realize my choice of words, that you think that you do not have control. Because I don't want to guess, and I don't want to assume, but most importantly, I need for them to make that connection in their brain. They say, well, I don't have control over how much money I'm going to make. So my response is, just so that I understand, how much money do you want to make? Try having that conversation with your people. I will tell you, it's been 50-50 with me. I've had stylists that go, I don't know. I said, oh, well, if that's part of how you define control, would it make sense to you that we at least put a stake in the ground? And we begin to have that conversation with them. And I said, well, how much do you think that you're going to make? They said, well, I don't know. And listen, Andrew, I don't know either, but this is what's happening is their perception of a loss of control. I just need to validate it. I don't know if it's the truth or it's their truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a leader, I wish that I could give you definitive responses. There's more to it than this, but the more to it comes from the thinking of that individual. And you started off the question so well, is that it differs from person to person. So I want to understand, one, how you define control, and two, what is it that you have in control already so that I can use that as a reference? And then three, where is it that you want to have control? And then I would ask them, how much influence do you think that you have on that? And what have you done currently to heavily weight the outcome in your favor?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting once you go through that. There are some legitimate fears. Please do not misunderstand me. There are legitimate fears. What I'm trying to flush out with their help is what is a legitimate fear.
Mm-hmm.
And what is
That's
it?
great.
Just
That's
a lack
great.
of data.
That's great. So what's the one piece of advice that you can leave us that would help us navigate through these, let's make it short, next 30 days, because perhaps besides New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, everyone's going to be open.
I have two responses to that. So I will respond to that one thing. You just did something that's very interesting, and I don't know if the audience picked up the nuance. You asked, what are we going to do in the next 30 days? And I want to share with you the brilliance behind that is that there's a gentleman, Chris Voss, who's a hostage negotiator. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. I don't like to recommend books. I can't hold back. It's just a great read. He's very engaging, but basically he brought emotional intelligence. He's a lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. And he brought emotional intelligence to this. And the book's fascinating. His basic premise is if these things work in hostage negotiations, they should work in day-to-day life. But one of the things that he realized is that when he was negotiating with not only the family that had someone abducted, but the people that abducted the person, he always operated in time frames. And he said human beings can get from one point to another. And it's a very interesting observation. And so he would say, you know what? I will get back to you in 2 days. Every 2 days we'll communicate. Or every 24 hours, I will reach out to you. Even if I don't have an update, my commitment to you is that I will do that. And what it does for human beings is they know I only have to get from here to here. And he said that stake in the ground is interesting. He was in the military. He said one of the really cruelest things they did to us, they go, hey, we're going to go out for a run. I had no idea how long it was. Do I sprint? Do I pace myself? 6 minutes? What's going to go on? As soon as they put context to it, we're going out for a 5-minute run. I knew I could go all out. And so I love, love, love what you did. And I would encourage you guys to replicate that, is that when you ask your people to be flexible, as an example, don't say, hey, James, will you be flexible? Just go, hey, Derek, how flexible could you be? That was figuratively speaking, James. Sorry, I should have defined that for you. I learned.
I just took a dad's ballet class
Yes.
at a charity event, so I am very flexible today. AJ, just tell me the name of the book. Split the Difference.
Yeah,
Split the difference.
never split the difference.
Never
Yeah,
split the
it's
difference.
boss. Yeah. So what I would say to Derek is I'd say, listen, Derek, how flexible can you be over the next 30 days? Contextually, that's much different than me saying, hey, Derek, can you be flexible? Because we're saying that, the new normal, it's just too much pressure. And everybody contextually is, okay, now for the next 5 years, for the next, and I love what you did is for the next 30 days. And so when I talk to people, and whether it's salespeople or whether it's stylists or owners, I would talk when I was doing my consultation, with the stylist, what I'd recommend is when I get with the clients and say, hey, we got to leave the minimum of 5 minutes at the end of our time together for this consultation. And by the way, I don't recommend retailing. So if anybody was going to ask, I do recommend a consultation though. And what I would say is that I want to talk about the next 35 days. And because I can't predict what's going to happen, and I'm only going off of what I know to be true, that we weren't open, the potential to happen again, I want to talk about where your comfort level is on a scale of 1 to 10 in replicating this look. I want to talk about where your comfort level is in using your tools. I want to talk about where your comfort level is that you have the right products, that you know how to use them. And so I want to I hope everybody picked up on that nuance piece. So forgive me for going off on that, but it's a brilliance to communicating, and it gives context, and it puts a stake in the ground for people and shifts their perspective. So thank you for that. I will answer your question. One piece of advice is this simple: don't judge. You want to have the thinking that I am here to help, not to judge. And I'll leave you with this story and we can wrap up. This church had been around for about 100 years, 96 years. They had no neighbors still after to the right. One day for sale sign goes up, the same day a sold sign. So a member of the church goes down to the township and said, I want to know who our new our neighbors are going to be. They said, oh, it's a strip club. So if you guys are with me, there's a strip club and there's a church. So her thinking was that this is immoral and that it's wrong. Her feelings were anger and resentment towards the situation. So her behavior was to get people together to picket and to petition. Well, there's another member of the church, and her thinking was, we're not really here to judge. We're just here to help. And so what she did is she got together a group of people. They get together on Saturday night, and they'd make eggs and bacon and pancakes, and they're really to serve the unserved. And so I just want to share with you, you had picketing, petitioning, right, for those people, and then you had pancakes, and the difference was the person's thinking. Things are what they are. Church next to a strip club, it is what it is. Your thinking will determine the behavior and the outcome. So I will stop there, my friend. I didn't even look at the time. I think we've kept it to an hour or so.
We've done, can we take some questions? Does the audience have questions for Jay? Let's open it up a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, just like on the last call, if you want this fun T-shirt, Jay's book, if you can tell, for you crossword fans like I am, Leave Your Mark. You can go to Jay's website and get his book. Jay, and listen, I always talk about how you taught Dr. Lou's class about the psychocosmetologist, which I think it became, for me anyway, and what I know, I didn't know why that wasn't like such an important thing during this climate right now with everything happening, of hairstylists wondering where their place is in the universe and saying, well, it's your doctor, your dentist, and your hairstylist, and your hairstylist is probably more important because they know more about you than either one of those two people that you lie to. Hey doc, I don't smoke anymore. But oh hey, I'm getting a divorce. Like you're not telling. Oh, how many times a day do you brush? Do you floss? It's like, oh yeah, I floss like 5 times a day. Oh, I totally don't floss, and my husband cheats on me. Hairstylists know way more than those two. So for the number 3 man, we're sort of like, I don't know. We should be number 1.
Well, here's what I'm gonna. Things are going so well. This will be interesting when I say this. Just bear with me, guys. I just want to push you. You can't be the hero and the victim. I just want to tell you, something that I've observed with society and as an industry, we've been really, really guilty of it, is we're torn between being the hero and the victim. It just doesn't work that way. Wonder Woman will save the world, but she's not complaining, oh, my plane, you know what? I'm having issues there. You're going to have to choose in this story whether you're going to be the hero or the victim. You have to. And I'm not judging you. I'm just telling you, you have to. You can't be the hero and the victim. And I've seen people, they're asking for money and gift cards and can you pay in advance? And I'm just sharing with you, heroes don't do that. But yet you're going to want to default back to being the hero. And you got to choose. You've got to choose on whether you are going to be the hero or the victim in the story, because it drives a different emotion and it drives a different behavior. And so when you say that, James, I want you guys to take it in. And I struggled with the message in that I loved the message, but then there became somewhat of a victim mentality attached to it. And it just didn't resonate. It wasn't authentic. It wasn't congruent. And so I want to push you guys. I do want to, because I think people are going to drop off. I do have something for you guys. And so as the 4 of us got a chance to talk, what's important is that we do something that's sustainable. Inspiration and motivation has its place. What this is supposed to be is transformation. So if you go to my website and you go to Jay Williams Co., so JayWilliamsco.com, and you go to the store, you will see the t-shirt James has. If you're a girl or a woman on here, for you, there are baby doll t-shirts, V-necks, really, really soft.
I thought this was the baby doll t-shirt. What kind of
looks a little bit different.
To tell me, that's what I wanted.
Yes.
That was what my order was. Now I can send it back.
For you
Now,
guys,
now you tell us, James.
yes, yeah, thank you. If you have to tell someone it's a baby doll, that's
Now you tell us, man.
Hey, listen,
for you guys.
Not to kill your JayWilliamsCo.com, but
Yes.
most salon owners should be happy that when we go back, we're going to have to wear some type of hazmat suit and a mask, because they won't know how fat you got at home from eating all these crazy Cheetos, and you're going to have to wear a mask, so they won't know how much you drank during this process. So, listen,
Or hazmat suit.
embrace the whole thing. Astronaut suit, that doesn't matter. You're only breathing your own breath. It's like, hey, you're the only one killing yourself.
Well, I don't know how to segue off of that, so bear with me. But before you guys check out, I do want to do this because this is important for the 4 of us. You had a takeaway. If you go there, to James' point, you can buy the t-shirt and the book there. 100% of the profits go towards stopping human trafficking. However, for you guys, if you use the code Leave the Mark, you can go in and purchase the electronic version of the book and the audio version. If you put in the code Leave the Mark, it will be complimentary. So show up as $9.99, $12.99. You put in the code Leave Your Mark. If you want to get that for your teams, you have 24 hours to use this. Feel free to do it. The goal here is that this is a transformation, a shifting in your thinking and your behavior that gets you the performance that you guys need. So I will leave it there, and I'll answer any questions you have. Andrew, thank you, by the way. Positioning. You challenge my thinking too, so I
Thank you, Jay.
appreciate that.
Thank you. You are what you've left us with tonight is eminently doable. Definitely it's a must do if we're those 50% or whoever is going to be left. And this thing is all about what you have to do to be in that 50 or 60% of the winners. And that's what it's going to be like. And it starts with your thinking, really. And I think that's the message that you have delivered.
Yeah, and I think that Jay, in the last few, obviously we know each other pretty well, but between his last 2 calls for you guys at the BBR, is he's challenging the way that you ask questions, which challenges the way your clients think or your staff thinks, because everybody wants to talk about the new normal, which Andrew knows that I hate the term the new normal at this point. But if you waited all this time to try to challenge your clients and your staff to ask the right questions or things that could help with the, just to challenge what they're thinking, do it now. You've been closed for all these months. You could basically open and paint the place whatever color you want. They're not going to remember. They're going to be so happy to see you. If you always want it to be lime green, well, Benjamin Moore, I'll give you the color code. You can go down tomorrow because they're essential. So you could paint your whole salon lime green. It's not that hard.
Do you know why I hate the
Jay will
term?
help you.
You know why? Why do you think I can't stand that term, the new normal? Why?
Tell me.
Okay, I will tell you. Because, and this is in my head, I think that when that term gets associated with something not as good as the old normal. And I believe that we're going to create our own future. And that future is big, bright, and bold. So when we use terminology like that, it's not conducive to where we want to go.
Can you do me a favor? After we get off, Andrew, give me that. I'm going to take a picture of you and I'm going to turn that into a meme because you are absolutely right. So I've only been in the business 10 years. My wife has been in, I won't tell you, she's only been in, I won't give you the number. I'll tell you this way. But we've had the luxury. I've met a lot of really famous hairstylists over my tenure here. She's had the luxury of meeting a lot of famous stylists to get education and things through. And, foundationally, if you said, hey, Vidal or, our good friend Philip Wilson or whoever it was, foundationally, there were fantastic people that built the foundations which most and all salons should be built on. So the new normal, like you said, it's like challenging the fact, oh yeah, well it was great and then it sucked and now we're going back to when it was great. It should have been great all the way through. So I'm hoping that maybe we sort of reflect back and bring it back to those foundational elements of just what it was in education and thoughtfulness.
I just think it's a time to create. It's probably the greatest opportunity we have ever had, ever. And I know that may sound a little bit mashugana, but darn it,
You get lemons, make lemonade.
Let me challenge you guys a little bit because it's only my role, and here's the deal. The question is the answer to all of this. You need to ask your people, when a client comes in, they go, I can't wait for the new normal. What is it that you like about normal? Now, Andrew, you alluded to it before. One of the things they like about normal is predictability, because predictability leads to trust. And so they don't want a new normal. What they want is that they want predictable. So I will share with you that it can vary from person to person. There's no two human brains that are alike, never have been, never will be. And so if you guys have one takeaway, is to ask questions, seek clarity, because we operate off of our own perspective and experience. And if you're in a scenario that there's another stakeholder, so if you're a stylist and you have a client, whatever the scenario is, in order to complete that picture, you're going to need the perspective of the other person. So I challenge you guys to ask people, what is it about the normal that they like? Because I think they're using the term, and that's not what they mean. They go, I just want to be able to go in my salon. I want to be able to hug someone. I want to be able to walk into my favorite bar. That's not new. That's just, they want the predictability. Mm-hmm. I want to have the control of not wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage you guys, ask questions. Every chance you get, whatever you have in your mind as a statement, turn it into a question.
Hey, listen, Jurassic Park, which was a humongous entertainment facility. So if your salon had all the razzle dazzle of a Jurassic Park and all these exotic animals, they've eaten everybody on the island like 5 times in a row and they still reopened. So the clients can all be eaten, the staff can be eaten, and you could obviously survive and make $1 billion movie if you just recreate yourself just that tiny bit using Jay Williams's questions. Or if you go to jaywilliamsco.com, you can get your free ebook right now in the next 24 hours.
I'd even say live in the question.
Yeah, just be there.
A different place to be.
I have one more thing for the group here, and I didn't share it with you, and so I wouldn't want you to hear it somewhere else. I made a decision about 5 weeks ago. James and I had this conversation. I can't tell you that I thought it through, but the end result's really been tremendous. Is that I decided 5 weeks ago, in good conscience, I couldn't ask people for money for the work that I do. So I don't believe in free. And if you've ever heard me speak, it almost contradicts. It seems hypocritical. So I use the word pro bono so that I'm not a hypocrite there. But I've agreed to do for the next 90 days all my work pro bono. So if you are on the call, and the work that I do is one-on-one work. The work that I do at this point would be a Zoom call with your team. Andrew had some great questions. I bet we could capture those from him, and we could just replicate this experience for your team. And so if you guys want to reach out, my commitment to you is that here's the way it'll work. If you guys care more than I do, I care, I'm in to this. So if that's what your commitment is, you have a level of interest, you can go to the website, you can contact me there. It's jay@jwilliamsco.com, and we'll connect via email. And that's my commitment to you. I do want to be part of the solution. And how do we all get through this? And what a great story I feel it'll be is when we do get through this. I shared with the group earlier that, Andrew, I love your optimism. And here's where I want to share this with you guys is that it's not optimism alone when I listen to you, Andrew. There's a balance of optimism and interrogating reality. It's not blind optimism. Well, I hope things will be better in September, and I hope they'll be better in October. You guys are really like, just exploiting what the reality is and interrogating it. And it's going to be a combination of those two things. But if you look at the data, we were just chatting before, if you guys were on early, that the influenza, I looked it up because I just want to see what the parallels were and what was the lessons that could be learned. So in 1917-18, when the influenza was, 600,000 Americans were killed. So right now, I think we're at 85,000. So that's about 6 or 7 times the rate were killed. And think about it, they didn't have the technology that we have now, or certainly medicine hadn't evolved to the point that it is. But what was interesting when I was reading the article is they talked about the Roaring '20s. And in the article, what it said was the Roaring '20s they were referring to was the economic times. And so, you do have this fear about how it's going to impact you economically. And by the way, that is a valid fear. And if you begin to take steps, you spend less and save more. And I heard yesterday that Americans, actually savings went up last month and credit card balances went down. And so I want to share it with you is historically, we as a culture, as a race, as a species, we are very, very resilient. And that happened in 1917, 1918, and then the Roaring '20s started. And we had this nice little stretch. Now, some of you are either old enough or historians, we had the Great Depression in 1929. Yes, we did. And we recovered from that as well. And so as you walk away, I want you guys to share with your team is that, yes, these fears, let's look at them, and let's look at the facts too. And so I love the optimism from the three of you and also the comments in the group. And I just want to share with you is that blind optimism won't serve you well. But if it's a combination of optimism, we will get through this. And what you guys are doing each and every Friday, where you interrogate reality and the facts, and that you guys are constantly adjusting. And Andrew, what you said, hey, we're just going by 30, 35 days, and things are only permanent until they change. That will get us through. So I want to thank you guys.
Thank you, Jay.
So much. Yes. Derek, one day I want to be on your jet or sit in your wine cellar.
Have a drink at his bar.
Yes. And Andrew, I want to be in your hotel that you've been living at all these years. And James, ought to be you.
You can sleep on any one of the bunk beds in my house. Anytime you're always welcome, Jay.
Let me tell you, just, Papa was Rolling Stone, right? Wherever he laid his hat was his home. That's me. I'm there. So
everyone have a great weekend, a productive weekend. Stay pumped, stay positive.
Thank you, guys. And the audience too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's the audience.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And we'll see you Monday night.
Got this. All right, take care, guys. Thank you.
Great weekend, guys. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you.